Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go, Josh.
Man, so we said last week, we're like, okay, we're going to do something. We're going to shake it up a little bit. We're going to do should have seen. And usually when we do this little subsection of our podcast, you pick a movie that I haven't seen, I pick a movie that you haven't seen, and then we talk about both of them in the episode. Well, this time we decided to watch a movie that neither one of us had seen. So we chose David Bowie's feature-length debut as an actor, The Man Who Fell to Earth. David Bowie's kind of like been in our podcast for a while.
From day one, actually.
Well, but I mean, recently, we keep like realizing that everybody is peppering in their trailers with David Bowie songs, or David Bowie's songs show up in Top Gun Maverick, or, you know, it's just, it seems like you kind of really can't get away from his influence on pop culture, and specifically this year, his influence on a lot of the movies that we've talked about. So we were like, you know what, let's do this. So I did not get the movie that I was expecting. What did you feel?
Well, first of all, let me ask you, what did you think you were going to get? Just look at the poster.
Well, no, I mean, I was expecting a 1970s sci-fi movie with not a lot of special effects or no special effects at all, which that is what we got. But I've never seen a Nicolas Roeg movie, not even Don't Look Now, which I know is like a huge movie. But I kind of expected it to be somewhat experimental, but like there were things that immediately took me out of the movie. And there were great things. So I definitely have to start with the great things. But there were things that immediately took me out of the movie, and I was fighting against those things. I was trying to keep my mind open to experiencing the movie in the way that someone in 1976 would have experienced the movie. And I was trying to brush all that stuff aside. But, you know, one of my big questions for you was like, are we wired to watch a movie like this now? Like, especially, I've seen a lot of like newer movies recently, and then, you know, I just watched Michael Mann's Thief, James Caan, who just actually passed away, as the star of that movie. And it's a great movie. And it's a movie made the year that I was born, 1981. And it still holds up, and it's dynamic, but it's dated in certain ways, but it is still super dynamic and arresting, and it will keep the audience in the palm of its hand. This movie feels like it's trying to test the audience, which I'm totally for, but I have questions. But there were definitely some really bright spots.
I apologize. I don't mean to sound like a smartass when I said just look at the poster. I didn't mean it sounded like that's all that would solve your whole problem. But if you look at the poster, you know it's Bowie, you know it's 1976, you know it's sci-fi. It's exactly what we got. It was as strange as I thought it was going to be. And that was my first positive thought that I wrote down. Nice. It is as stranger in a strange land. It is as strange as I thought it was going to be. And I'm glad about that. I'm a generation older than you. So I have had black and white TV. I've had color TV. I have had movies. I have had VCRs, DVDs, CDs. I have climbed the chain as I've grown up with different technology. You kind of come in right as the revolution has taken over. And by the time you're old enough to choose your own movies, all that stuff is in place. So you're used to certain things. I think it's like anything. I use the example of going and seeing a play that I know the actors in, and they're all excellent, and I know that the director's excellent. I know the play is very good, and it takes like 5 to 15 minutes to adjust. And it's not the play, and it's not the actors, it's not the direction. It's my mind adjusting to the world that I'm being asked to be involved in. So maybe because of all of those factors, it takes me less time to adjust, but you know what you're going to get from the very beginning with the the kind of like ambulance English sci-fi sound that's in all of those movies from the 70s as he's trying to walk down the mountain.
Oh yeah, down the hill there.
Yeah. But once again, for me, it comes down to performances. And from the moment Bowie takes the screen and the moment he starts making choices, they're solid and they're so on point. You know, there's a part when in the very beginning of the film when he's coming down that hill where he's kind of picking up speed, and then his foot kind of comes out from underneath him and he stops and he's like, oh yeah, I don't have this walking on this planet I don't have. And if you don't already, it's impossible to not know it's a sci-fi film if you do any investigation on it. But if you come to it fresh, you might not know that that's an alien coming to an alien, I guess. Yeah, because that's how they make reference to him later on as Englishmen. You might not know that fact watching the film, but because of the choices the actor makes, you know something's askew. So I said, one of the notes that I wrote down in the positive column was the 70s helped it and hurt it all at the same time. Because the 70s has that kind of sci-fi bubbly look anyway. Everything's plastic and bubblicious anyway. So plastic shoes and weird metallic colors of pants and androgyny and just sci-fi-esque. And a lot of people have ripped that off and used it later on and made their sci-fi whatever, their TV show whatever, with these hints of the 70s because it just works. So I see what you're saying, but I'm wondering, it's as much the film's not fault, that's not the word I'm looking for, but it's as much the film being dated that makes it hard to get into as it is us not adjusting to it because we don't have to nowadays. I often wonder when I watch a film like this, not trying to watch it from the 1976 point of view, but would I, if I was an adult and able to see this film in 1976, would I have had any problems with all of the so-called issues that I have that we're going to talk about later on? I'm not so sure. I think I would just dive right into it. That said, when you look at something like 2001 and the decade that it was created in, which is close, actually, it's older, Kubrick somehow did it right.
Well, he had a bigger budget too, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I think that the purpose of this film is not sci-fi mastery. It's a character study. It's about different themes and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know if you can. I don't have as much of an issue adjusting to something, but it's like if the HD goes out for some reason, my nephews freak out because they can't see it. It's too blurry. To me, I just adjust because I'm used to it. So I don't know. So you had a hard time adjusting to it because of the.
I did, but first of all, here's what I'm gonna say. Like there are some great performances in this movie, and I think that the way that Nicolas Roeg decided to tell the story. First of all, I'll say that I watched the director's cut. I'm assuming you did too. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, as opposed to there's like a theatrical cut that was only 2 hours long. So I was like, oh, did I watch the wrong thing? But no, I watched what Nicolas Roeg wanted us to see. And I don't even know if you can find the theatrical cut. There was a scene with David Bowie and Candy Clark, who plays Mary Lou, close to the end where he has a gun, like a pistol. You saw that in the movie, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, then you saw the director's cut.
I rented it from Prime, so whatever was on Prime.
So that being said, the thing that really interested me and got me fired up was that Nicolas Roeg decided to play with time and the passage of time, and we're so used to there being like a very clear delineation of like, we are now moving 3 years in the future, or we are now doing this, or we are now doing that, or even having a transition, one scene with two characters and then immediately having another scene with the same characters, but time has passed. Usually you have some sort of a transition in there, whether it's time-lapse video or something like that tells you that the time has passed. He didn't do that. He's just letting you catch up as the audience. And I think that that's bold, first of all. And secondly, I think that that's engaging because you're like, wait a second. Okay, his hairline, the Farnsworth character, his hairline is a little bit farther back. Or, whether it's the Mary Lou character, like, she's changed a little bit. Or, you're trying to figure out, because one of the big conceits of the movie is that the alien that David Bowie plays doesn't age, at least doesn't age at the same rate that humans age. So you see people around him, Rip Torn, people around him getting older, and he's not getting older. So that's a whole nother, dynamic. I love that. And I love that they're not, well, like we said, last week, as far as like spoon feeding the audience, I loved it that they're not spoon feeding the audience in this particular case for that instance. And I thought that the other thing that they did was awesome was that you get dropped into this story and you can see, yes, we do see him crash land on Earth, and then we see him come out of that crash landing and kind of like stumble through. But then the very next scene at the very beginning, we see him and he already knows the language. He already has a way to make money with his fake wedding rings, and he understands how to do transactions, how to like transact with humans, and what people expect out of you, and what would be considered quote unquote weird and what might not be considered quote unquote weird, and he's able to move through life at least at a bare minimum. Whereas after I watched this movie, I watched the first episode of the new show, The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Naomi Harris. And it kind of starts from scratch. Like, it's like, hey, he comes to Earth and he doesn't know any words. And the first words he hears, he learns those, and he figures out, from context, like what those words are. And it's like the benefit of that for a TV show is that you get a lot of mileage out of that, because there's going to be humor associated with that. There's going to be awkwardness associated with that. You get a lot of like, there's, scenes can write themselves. Martha Plimpton's in the show, by the way. So,
oh yes,
yeah. So
I'm in.
There you
I'm
go.
In.
She plays a police officer. So, it's an interesting setup. Also, it's not necessarily a remake. It is a sequel. There is a character that is Thomas Newton in the new show. So all of that, it got me charged up. I was interested, and I was excited that they didn't take the easy way out as far as like, like I said, getting mileage out of like, oh, look, he's an alien. He's got to figure out how to, oh, what is this? Oh, it's
Starman.
A Coke can. I haven't seen Starman.
Like the Jeff Bridges movie. Yeah. Starman.
So, that kind of stuff, like I was like, yeah, let's move on. Let's get into this stuff and let's figure out like the whole concept of the movie, where he has to come to Earth because his planet is running out of water, or has basically run out of water. He knows that we have water. It makes, once you learn more about him in the movie, it makes that first scene where he drinks water from the river like just that much more impactful and meaningful. So I love that kind of stuff. But and just the fact that he's here in the way that it's like he has every winning lottery ticket, because the technology that he has in his world, it can directly apply to our world. We're just not there yet. And so he's the one who's inventing all this stuff that isn't even really being invented. He's just like, oh yeah, you do this. So that whole concept was really cool to me.
Not only was it time lapsed without knowledge, and then the audience had to figure it out, the dialogue and the narrative is like that too. The dialogue is very simple and says, I'll give you an example, not that it's a huge spoiler, because I don't know if you would even pick up on it if you heard it and then saw it. You might not even connect it when they're in the back of the limo and Rip Torn goes, I'm worried about your return. Mm-hmm. And he goes, don't worry about that. That's all you get. That's all you get. And then you realize throughout the process of the film, he's not worried about returning. Oh yeah, he's trying to leave. And this has all been about him waiting the time. And then you find out later on in the film that there's been a long passage of time from the time he landed to the time we actually interact with him with the rings and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a huge, and the way that, is it Nicolas Roeg? Mm-hmm. Nicolas? The way he handles that is brilliant, because it's not a flashback, it's a flash now. What do you call that? I guess it's a flashback, but it's not, because he's seeing it in his mind's eye now, and you're not seeing anything but what he's seeing or remembering, and all you're seeing is an empty field, which used to have a farmhouse and all these people staring, and obviously those people are staring at him because he's come out of the thing, out of the spacecraft.
Well, yeah, it's like he's not bound by our concept of time, I guess.
Yeah. I like that. I like the fact that the African-American character,
Bernie Casey, Peters is his character's name. Yeah.
You really don't even know why he's in the film until you know why he's in the film.
Yeah.
Like, why is he in the film? There's no dialogue in those two scenes he's in with Buck Henry. Mm-hmm. There's no dialogue at all. Well, do you think we're going to, nope, we haven't caught up. Yeah, we're going to do this. Okay, bye. And you're like, what just happened? And it seems nonsensical until it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that style and that idea, you're not spoon feeding people, but you're feeding them the food you want them to eat at that moment. Although there's still steak and potatoes on the platter, they're giving you corn right now. And then once you eat the corn, you have a little bit of the potatoes, but you don't even know why you're eating the potatoes because you don't even know you have steak yet. And then all of a sudden you're eating this meal and you're like, oh, this is really good. Oh, this all starts to make sense. See, that washes away anything about 1976, anything about wonky music, which all 1970s music sounds like porno music. It just does. It just does. And then the kind of hillbilly banjo music that you hear at one point and the country music that you hear at one point and the stereotypical sheriffs and stuff. All of that stuff is okay with me because of the smart way he went about telling this story.
So Candy Clark, who plays Mary Lou, she surprised me, and I have seen American Graffiti, and I guess that's like one of her biggest roles. Was she had kind of like
nominated for the Oscar.
The bouffant hair. She did get nominated for the Oscar. Okay,
she did, and I don't remember her at all in American Graffiti.
She had like the big blonde hair, yeah. And in this movie, she. And I was talking myself out of it as the movie went on, and I was like, okay, it's getting a little, like, her line readings were getting a little crazy. But I think for me, like, especially close to the beginning, like, she is that, we did a podcast on it a bajillion years ago, like, actors who have it, and meaning, like, who have a natural, like, a capability of being natural.
David Bowie.
Yeah. Well, I would say that
Rip Torn.
Yeah, Rip Torn is, yeah. But the guy I always go to is like Kevin Costner. Like he just feels like he's not even trying. And, some actors you can feel like they're trying. I'm not saying that this performance of Mary Lou by Candy Clark reaches necessarily that level, but it felt like a real person. And in a movie like this, I was interested to like get that feeling out of it. As the movie went on, like I feel like the writing for her character got real rough, and so that was not necessarily her fault.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to, for the first time in a long time, 100% completely disagree with you.
She was not naturalistic for you at all. Okay.
Not at all.
Okay. So tell me where the strings are. Like I want to see
when you see Rip Torn's a great example. When you have to do a scene where a person is putting their hands on him the way that the females are putting their hands on him, and where the females are speaking to him when they're in bed. You remember the scenes I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Rip Torn scenes?
Okay. Yes.
That's one thing I have a problem with. Like, we spent way too much time on that character. But
yeah,
whatever.
Well, actually, I was kind of glad that they gave him a backstory because I think it would have been hard. Yeah, okay, I get you. I feel you. You're right.
If he had an impact in the movie and at the end of the movie, that would make more sense. But he really didn't have an impact.
Because he wasn't doing anything more than. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. Okay, in the middle of my disagreeing with you, I just agreed with you. I just want to state that for the record. But okay, so the sex scenes between Rip Torn and the girls,
sure,
and what they have to do. Okay, he lays there as if any other person in that real life scenario would do. He never flinches and he never overacts it. He just assumes that this is a normal after sex conversation that they have. And it's nothing like I've ever seen in a film directly like that, ever. And so the naturalistic ability to just sit there and not overplay that moment is difficult to do. And he does it without any problems. And if you just listen to the dialogue, he sounds like he's talking like we're talking right now. She sounds like she's way up in register most of the time. The whole whining thing that she was going through, and maybe it's the written dialogue, I don't know. But her first opening scene,
picking him up and taking him in,
that I thought was brilliant.
See,
and I was like, we're in a ride here. This is going to be a ride. But as soon as she has the dialogue later on, maybe I have another one. just something about it was like, wait.
So you think? So is it because I know you've had to play drunk before in plays, and so
and stoned and cocaine down,
and you're very conscious. Are you very conscious? You've said, I think in the past, that you're very conscious of like, the best way to play drunk is to act like you're not drunk.
Correct.
So you feel like this was not
her being drunk was great. Him being drunk later on was great too. Bowie had it down. Bowie has it down, man. He is a natural. It's not that she was playing drunk. It's the line readings that she was giving from that point on. There's something so not naturalistic. Like, why would anybody want to be around her, let alone pull her into your life? And I you know who Hilary Swank from $1 Million Baby? That's who she's supposed to be. That's who Mary Lou is. No land town.
Yeah.
Nothing. And dreams of some weird stranger with orange/blonde hair come in and save the day. I did not feel like she did anything to help me understand why this character, Thomas, they call him a bunch of different things at certain points. Newton. We have to talk about my pronunciation of people's names, and I just listened to our Thor Love and Thunder podcast. And why do I keep saying Watatiti?
I don't know.
Why am I saying Wata?
You were very consistent with that. You were very consistent.
I know.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi,
okay,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. When I listened back on it, I was like, why is there an extra syllable in there, Paul? Like, I know that guy's name is not Watatiti. What is wrong with me?
Oh, no.
Anyway, so I believed it when I said it.
There you go.
So, make the choice. So nothing other than her bravery and her sheer acceptance of the stuff that she had to do as an actress. She has no fear, and she's a beautiful woman. She should have no fear, but nakedness is intimidating to a lot of people. She should not worry about it. And I'm glad that she didn't worry about it, because that they didn't do that thing where they put a blanket over top of something so you didn't see something else. It's all there. I like that. So good for her that she was brave, but I needed her to make me understand why this person, and then you find out the length of time that he's been here. So has he done this throughout his whole entire stay? Has he connected with one woman his whole entire stay? Has he connected with one man his whole entire, for the last 50 years before they were born? Did he have another Mary Lou in his life? I don't know. And I didn't mean to sound like mean by saying I didn't want to be around her. I didn't want to be around her. But I'm trying to understand why a character like that would need her to be in his life.
Well, I mean, she introduces him to gin, at least. I mean, he's drinking a bunch of water, and then she's like, oh, yeah, try this. It's gin. And then after that, he's pretty much like drunk from that time.
No, he doesn't drink it when she first offers it to him. Because she says to him as he's drinking that powdered water looking stuff that you remember he pours a little something that makes
it's like
water look cloudy.
Yeah, it's like an Alka-Seltzer or something, isn't it?
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Some alien something.
Is it really?
What's the stuff Jennifer Lawrence is drinking in Mother? The gold, sprinkly stuff. What's that? Who the hell knows? What's in the suitcase in Pulp Fiction? Who knows?
Okay. So it can be whatever we want it to be.
So anyway, he's drinking that, and she goes, you sure do like your water. And she's drinking a drink.
Yeah.
It's not until later on when all things are starting to fall apart and he's locked in that building that he's locked in.
Yeah, it's like a government insane asylum. Yeah.
But it's not. Nothing else is built
he's
up
hidden
except for his room.
It. Yeah, he's like hidden. Yeah, it's he's definitely there.
It's
not of his own volition.
Yeah, that's when he starts to become a drunk. When all else has failed. She pulled me out every single time.
Got it. Well, now that we're talking about things that are pulling us out of the movie, the ADR was jarring to me. Especially in situations where, if they're laying in bed or there's people kind of interacting. What they did was they completely removed the on-set dialogue and they replaced it with the additional dialogue recording or the voiceover. And they try to make it line up and they try to make it sound natural, like it's, like whether the woman's kind of like, laughing or kind of cooing or whatever, or people are kind of interacting back and forth, or the breathing is so weird. Like the breathing is, whenever you don't, if you're not like capturing that type of audio, that very low audio level sounds, if you don't capture those on set in the room, it sounds completely different than real life. And that is something that I could not get over. And it happened over and over and over again. They spent so much time doing all of this overdubbing of dialogue, and it really, really bugged me. Like it was extreme. I felt like, so it would used to be you wouldn't necessarily have the ability to capture that kind of audio a long time ago, whether it's a movie in the 30s or 40s or whatever. But with the ADR that they could do starting in the 50s, 60s, and then obviously on into the 70s, they were able to do that. Now you can choose whether to do that or not, and obviously it's a lot easier to do that in post-production than to try to get the whole set super quiet and make sure that nobody's like walking around and boards are creaking or whatever. But by just the fact that they didn't do that, or they had to overdub that kind of stuff, like it just completely ruins any kind of a mood or a I'm trying to like figure out like, oh, does he really love her, or what's their interaction like in this situation, and it just sounds so unnatural, and I can't get over it, and that was one thing that just, it was, for me, it's like an unforgivable sin of those, and I know it's of the time. Like if it was made in the 80s, it probably wouldn't have been that way. If it was made in the 50s or whatever, it probably wouldn't have been that way. But just right in that pocket of, oh, we can do that. We could just re-record it in post-production and it'd be fine. Well, it did not work.
Well, then that's the answer to your initial question. Those are the type of things I never noticed until you pointed out, and those are the things that drive you crazy. So obviously something like this will never transcend for you because of those things right there.
Yeah.
Your technical ear, your technical upbringing, your engineering ear won't allow you to do that. I, on the other hand, unless it's pointed out to me, I will notice it. I'll be like, that's a little odd to my ear, but it doesn't pull me out of it per se. So what's the difference between doing that and looping when an actor goes in and loops? Most of the time, looping is for when dialogue happens, like if they're running or in their street scene, right? And then so what's the difference between what they did in this film and what they do now?
So we just talked about Michael Mann earlier. So a great example of the difference between dialogue that's added on, or sound effects that are added on afterwards, after a movie's shot, versus capturing the sound live, is Heat. His movie Heat from the mid-90s. There was a bank robbery scene, Val Kilmer and Robert De Niro robbing a bank with a bunch of other people, and Al Pacino's going after him, and everybody's got automatic weapons, and they're firing these automatic weapons in a specific place. They're in downtown LA with huge buildings, and whenever they fired them, they fired them with full on, blanks. Like they had full powder blanks in each of the guns. And so when they were firing these automatic weapons, you would get the initial sound of the percussion of the weapon firing, but then you would hear it. It's like in a cavern where it's just reflections all over the place. Yeah. And it just keeps going. Like the echoes keep going and going and going. And it makes it seem bigger. It makes it seem lifelike. It makes it seem terrifying. And if they would have, shot him with, puny blanks there on the set, and then afterwards gone in there and really cranked up the volume and made him really loud, you'd have heard the gun, but you wouldn't have gotten all of those echoes. It's like yelling in an empty room versus yelling in a cave. Like it's a totally different feel. So let's say you're in a soundproof booth and you say a line of dialogue, and let's say you're in the middle of the ping pong room that they were in, and you say a line of dialogue. Well, there's like four walls. They're all parallel. You're going to get all kinds of reflections and echoes and all that stuff. So when you record dialogue on set, you're going to get all that in the microphones that are on set. Even if they decide to loop it later on nowadays, what the sound operator will do is they'll sit there and they will get what's called room tone, and they will say, okay, everybody on the set needs to be dead silent for 5 minutes. And they just sit there and record for 5 minutes. And so when they get that room tone, it's essentially a virgin piece of audio in that space. So when they do loop it later on, they can have somebody's voice and they can they can say whatever lines they want to say, but then they'll overlay that on top of that room tone. So it'll sound like they're in that room. They can even, nowadays you can do all kinds of stuff where you can fake echo and all. You could kind of do that stuff back then. It was all analog, but now you're like, well, how big of a room do you want? Do you want a room that's 40 feet by 40 feet? All right, here's a plug-in. You throw that on and it sounds like you're in a room that big. Do you want a room that has a wood floor or do you want a room that's carpeted? Well, we can replicate that in a computer. So it's a lot easier nowadays to make dialogue sound like it was recorded in a room, even if it wasn't actually recorded in that room. So, we're essentially cheating at this point compared to 1976. They probably did have to loop a lot of dialogue for various reasons. Maybe the sound equipment didn't work that day when they shot it, whatever. But it's so egregious compared to what I'm used to hearing, and it just I couldn't get over it. And that's me. Like, just go online. A bunch of people love this movie. It's not something that is necessarily in dispute, but I just there were things that kept me from really engaging fully in it, and so that's, I don't know, a curse maybe. I don't know.
No, it's just the way that it is. But I find that fascinating what you just talked about. And that is the exact reason why we need to stay positive on this podcast. Because there's somebody out there going, how big of a room do you want it to sound like? We're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're going to a movie sitting in the dark. It sucked when we come out. We hated it. Well, there was somebody trying to figure out whether or not that was carpeted or wood flooring.
Yeah.
The sound. That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
That's why I have an appreciation for it. It's just part of my nature also, but as it is yours. But that to me is fascinating. That it would not have. I don't even know if you gave me a multiple choice question with, is this possible? Is that possible? Would you have to do this? I wouldn't even know that was even something in the zeitgeist of thought process for an engineer or sound engineer. It's fascinating to me. That's also the reason why we need to show that stuff on the Oscars and show people what they do, because look what they have to do. It's not just press microphone, go.
Yeah, it's essentially like you're welcome. Like we make it sound like it's actually happening,
Yeah, and that's why anybody bitches about any kind of technical rehearsals and a tech night where you're just running the cues and stuff like that. People bitch about it all the time. It's boring. It's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you have no idea how hard it is to time that, especially in a community theater thing where you're literally pressing 2 buttons at one time to get something recorded from that thing. And you have to know the cue. You have to respect that. And so you just go to a play and absorb all the magic. You just stand up there and do your dialogue and you think that sound is just going to happen. It only happens when you shut the hell up and let that person do their job. So shut up. It's disconcerting to people because I'm so quiet.
Yeah.
Because I respect it so much that people are like, what the hell's wrong with him? He's usually a goofball. Yeah, that's what they say to me. Are you mad? Not at all. Shh, don't talk to me.
That's right.
Peace.
Well, and the other thing that's another thing I don't understand. I don't have anything to that extent. And the people that I work with are really great people, so I don't have to deal with that. But in previous jobs, I have dealt with on-air talent that have very little patience, and it's kind of like you're the face of the whole thing. So it's like if a lighting cue doesn't work, like nobody's gonna like go down the street and be like, oh man, your lighting sucks to the person who's running the lights. But if they see somebody who was on stage, well, maybe they would do that, or you're essentially like the outward facing part of this production as the actor. You're the person that people see. So if all of the other people behind the scenes aren't able to get their jobs done effectively, then it's just going to make you look bad. You're going to be the one that is affected the most in the moment.
I don't understand how they don't know it's coming. You know that you've been in like 40 plays.
Yeah.
You know that this night is coming. You're an on-screen talent. You know that it takes a long time. Shut up. Eat your Twinkie and shut up. There's no reason to be upset about it because this is part of the process.
Yeah.
Accept it for what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did want to talk about the technology of World Enterprises, or we.
Yeah, I thought it was inventive. I thought it was cool. And I love that it's not explained.
Oh, the technologies specifically? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the instant film, it's
Yeah.
like it's just assumed that that's part of their world now.
Polaroid was around in 76, right?
Yeah, but not like that.
I know it wasn't
you had
like
to wait
that.
for it and you blew on it
Yeah,
and you
no.
shook it, even though that didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, and their music player, too, I thought was interesting, too. It's like,
Yeah.
how impractical is that? You can't even, like, set down all your music on a flat table. It would all just roll away.
But it looks cool.
It does look cool. But
It looks cool.
And then, you definitely have to put the clear dome on it before it works for some reason. Don't know why, but whatever.
The technology, yeah, it's not logical.
No.
But I love the fact that they don't explain it. They don't need for you to know it's logical or it's not logical or that it's practical or not practical. And I love the fact that he doesn't explain that that's where the music's coming from. He just pulls it off and he goes, no, play something else.
Yeah.
And then when she puts it down the second time, that's when you go, oh, that's cool. Because when she rolled out the film, I was like, wait a second, she's exposing the film. What is she doing? And then it's color and it's print and it takes, you're right, the movie, you have to catch up to the movie.
Yeah.
I like that stuff.
No, that's
I
cool.
think that's cool.
And I don't know if some of it was interesting to me because, I mean, you're right. The whole point of the movie is for him to start a company that's able to amass enough wealth to create a spaceship that can get him back to his world. Obviously, I mean, we haven't really talked about the themes of the film yet, but I'm just interested in the technology first before we talk about the themes. I'm interested in the technology that he chooses to give out. Like, and maybe his world doesn't like have a fix for having to use fossil fuels, but like close to the end of the movie, they're still gassing up in a gas station that is owned by World Enterprises. And, you know, there's certain things that he's like, oh yeah, we got that. We'll take care of that. But then other things that they're just like, well, even when Rip Torn goes to the record store to find the record that he recorded, but right at the end of the movie, it's like, wait, but didn't they revolutionize music playing with these little silver balls? I guess not. I guess there's still records around. I don't know, but. I mean, there's records around now, and we've had, you know, CDs and Spotify.
When
and all that
CDs
stuff.
came out, albums were still a choice.
Sure.
You either bought the album or you bought the CD. So that's Josh being Josh.
Hey, more people bought vinyl
Yeah.
this year than bought CDs. So
Yeah,
CDs are
'cause vinyl
effectively dead.
rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the technology was interesting. I thought how they incorporated it. I'm not so sure back in 1976 or back here when the man fell to earth that they knew fossil fuels were as bad for the environment. That's assuming that
true.
we know what we know now. Maybe at the time, we don't know why their planet has become dry. We don't know why. Nowadays, you could apply global warming. You could apply fossil fuels to that scenario that they're planet caught on fire basically and, you know, drained all the natural resources. That's why they live in those salt mines and those
the hut
salt
thing.
hills
Yeah.
and the hut train thing.
Yeah.
And the I had a hard time not thinking of Mad Max Thunderdome when I saw the curtain over top of it and I was like, we don't need another nope, wrong movie, you know. But that's all about imagination, and whether or not I think technically it made sense to me, it was imaginative and it was smart, and you're not explained this triangle wood mud hut thing, and you're not explained the rail that it's on, and I like that.
Me too.
You're not explained why they have tubes like from Dune, you know, still suits, but then you figure that out later on when you see the water running through it, that kind of stuff. At first you're like, they couldn't come up with a better alien design than no eyebrows and a tank on their back. What's happening
And
here?
the eyes too, the cat
Yeah, the
eyes
eyes
or
too.
whatever.
Yeah, but they couldn't come up with a better, but it's actually practical why they're wearing the tubes that they're wearing, because they're probably recycling water just like the suits in Dune. So I like all of that stuff. I thought it was imaginative. I thought it made the film intriguing instead of being weird sci-fi and unexplainable sci-fi and just cerebral sci-fi, that's all there. But the production designer made specific choices that I thought worked. And I also thought that with the technology thing, you don't want to pull it too far away from the decade that they actually live in, because he would have to have made the stuff out of the materials they have here on Earth at that time. I thought that that was really smart. And I also think that maybe, just like I don't have a rocket ship, but we now know that all those guys have rocket ships who have millions of dollars, billions of dollars. You know, he's got one parked in his backyard. And I didn't send a car up to roam around the Earth because I don't have the money to do that or orbit the Earth, but Elon Musk does. So maybe the little ball technology of music is just what David Bowie and his woman's technology, and that's because it hasn't been developed yet, because they don't really need to develop that stuff because they're out there doing other things, making money other ways. So who knows?
Well, yeah, I think as far as the themes go, I mean, you've got a man coming to another world, and, you know, with a focus and a drive, and he either gets sucked in to stay or gets forced to stay at some point throughout the film. I'm trying to like pull the main theme of this movie, because from what I've read, a little bit that I've read, is that there was some U.S. politics allegories going on with the book, because it was an American who wrote the novel, but then Nicolas Roeg and then the writer are both British, so they kind of like jettisoned all of the U.S. politics subplots and stuff, and pretty much just said like, the government knew that he came to Earth when he came to Earth, and they're going to keep him here because it's beneficial to Earth, and to specifically to the United States, I guess, in this case, to keep him on Earth and to keep him developing new things. But, you know, by the end, he's not in that room anymore, but he's essentially like resigned himself to be on Earth. You know, it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to go home.
Well, isn't that because of what she says? He's resolved to the fact that
they're dead.
They're dead.
Yeah.
And how long is it going to take for him to get back? And at this point, how long has it been since you've been there?
Yeah.
And now he doesn't have the technology like he had at one point, which is that did not benefit the narrative the way that the director put that together. When he's walking towards the spaceship, and then all of a sudden he's in the room, and you're like, wait. And then the African-American guy comes in, and then the other guy comes in, and you're like, oh, that guy had, oh, okay. It takes too long to catch up.
He thought
at
he
that
was
point.
going, like, and that's where,
right.
And they made like multiple people that I've read about, and like, you know, even in the credits of the movie, like they made a big deal about Jim Lovell being in this movie.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, I know he was in space, but like, I don't know. Somebody
original spaceman from Apollo 13. It says something like that.
It was just like,
original astronaut from Apollo 13.
We get it. All right, cool, man.
You've been in space. I mean, I get it too.
He didn't even have any lines. It's like, hey, look, it's Jim Lovell, and then like that's it. That was it in the movie. But so at that point in the movie, when he's thinks he's going to the spacecraft, you can tell like, he gets pulled off, and then his driver betrays him, which is like, you know, dang. It's pretty rough.
I have questions about the themes too, because I wrote down, what is this film about? ? Alcoholism, oversexed males, or intimacy between two people, and how erratic and upsetting it can be, and how thrilling and titillating it can be, because he splices that one sex scene together with a bunch of different weird stuff, and you're like, wait, what's he comparing this to? It stuck out to me, so I was like, okay, well, the sexuality of the film is very bold and in your face. I like that. And they're not hesitating from somebody jumping up and, you know, running around naked, and they're trying to hide him like we were talking about before. I like that. But what is the purpose behind such explicit, finger quotes, explicit sex scenes? Because, you know, we've seen way rougher sex scenes in a lot of films from past 1976 up to now. And so is it about a relationship? Is it about how male and females interact with each other? Is that why Rip Torn's character is dealing with middle age and still sleeping with 18-year-olds, which was creepy when he says that, by the way. It was like, oh, it's creepy. Even though 18 is like the starting point, it's still creepy because it was creepy. And maybe that's a 2022 disposition that we have, but I'm glad we do because it was creepy.
Well, also at the same time, Nicolas Roeg was going out with Candy Clark in this movie when he was directing her.
Of course he was. I wish I had said what I was going to initially say, but then I stopped myself because I didn't want to sound like a sarcastic person. I didn't want to sound like I was being cynical, but I was like, I didn't like her line reading. I didn't like her presence. I don't understand why. Was she sleeping with the director? I almost said that because it strikes me as, now that I know that, it's hard to be clear when you're sleeping with somebody objectively about certain things. It just is. And so maybe that's what he got out of her, and then that was it. The scene with the gun is a prime example, not to bag on her again, but that's
voiceover. That's voiceover.
Oh, I hated all of it.
It's not good.
Yeah, but I don't. It was a bad choice. Yeah. It doesn't matter how technically they did it. It was weird, and it didn't work. Now, I did like the whole gun and the wine thing, and I did like the whole bang bang shooting thing, which was irritating after 5 minutes of it, but it still worked. It put you in a place and a mood,
And that scene was the only time when I was on the edge of my seat, because you don't know what his motivation is at that exact moment. You don't know where his headspace is. You're not right. At any moment in the movie, there's always that underlying, like, this guy's an alien. Like, whatever we think is going to happen or whatever we think he's capable of, he's an alien. We have no idea what he's capable of. So that whole, like, kind of Chekhov's gun of potential outcomes of situations, that keeps you engaged in the movie, or can keep you engaged in the movie. And I think that they didn't overplay that hand, but in that particular scene, just the beginning of that, where you're just like, what is he gonna do at this point? And that's just him with a gun, even, like, but you could be like, could he kill her with laser ray vision? I have no idea, but
it's just touch her and her skin melts.
Exactly.
Well, actually, whatever. That's what's wrong with the sequence of him going into space and then all of a sudden in the car. Nothing is at stake the way it should be, and that contradicts what we were saying earlier about not filling in the audience too much, and you're eating the corn when you're supposed to be eating the corn instead of eating all of it at one time. So it kind of contradicts it. And I'm not saying they should have added some kind of suspense to that, but him not making it to his goal at any point would have upped the stakes of that scene. And so when he got turned away and been brought into the car, then you would be feeling it. You're trying to catch up to the point where, is he hallucinating? Is he had not enough water? Is he in space and tripping out? Is he remembering? Is he back on his planet? What's happening here? So I wrote down a couple other themes. Is it a relationship movie? Is it science versus man? Is it about technology and how well it helps us or how it hurts us? What is this film about? That said, I think it's about all of that stuff, and I could sit in on a class and figure it out. And I will read reviews and I will read some analytical studies of this film from this point on, and I will figure that out. What I need to know from you is, are we supposed to believe at the end of the film that Mary Lou is his wife who came with him? What is that all about? There's a shot where you see him as the alien, the woman as the alien, in the space suit and the stuff, and then you see that shot that you see earlier with Mary Lou and David Bowie turning into the camera, kind of like Portrait of a Lady type of thing. So 70s. It's so 70s.
It actually is like more like Persona, like Ingmar Bergman, like where he has like people like looking directly into the camera and then the black background. I don't know. It's just, it's very just kind of like, oh wow, we're really watching art now.
Yeah. Now it's art. Right there, that's art. So he says something later on in the film. He alludes to her being the alien wife.
She does play the alien wife. The actress plays his wife. Yes. So, but I don't believe that she is an alien in the movie. I think that's just a parallel thing that they decided to do in the film.
Okay. Well, another thing that kind of pisses me off a little bit is like, does every man in every film have to have a mistress in every movie we ever see? Is anybody faithful to their wife to where they can be on another planet and not be sleeping with another woman? I mean, misogyny aside, he's trying to get back to her.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of him hooking up with this woman and it becoming sexual, which it does. At first, you're thinking they're just friends because remember she's in the tub and she's exposed.
She's like, "Oh, it's
she's
okay."
like, "Oh, come on, come on in, don't be embarrassed." And he's like, "Okay, sure." And he leans very David Bowie-ish up against the wall, I'm like he's cool. But they do end up having a sexual relationship, and it's like, why are you so concerned about getting back to your family if you need a side relationship? I almost said something disgusting. You need a side relationship while you're here to maintain your what? Why is this in here? Mm-hmm. Why? And I'm sure it's because it's the 70s and all males make movies back then.
And that's part of it too. I was kind of like, it's such a cynical view, but it's like, man, how many women can we get on the casting couch for this role, type of a thing.
It would be cynical if the history hasn't proved that statement to be more true than not.
Yeah.
Because I thought about that. I thought when they have all of those women with Rip Torn, I'm thinking, what was the intention behind this sequence here?
Good question.
I mean,
it does nothing for the movie.
Yeah, totally nothing. It's bold, and I like the fact that they made bold choices in that. I've never seen anything like that before. That directness, I like that. But it's like, we need naked women, so let's put naked women in the film. Yeah. I think they found a plausible reason to do it, whether it's a necessity or not to the narrative, which I agree with you, it's not. But it just, maybe because we are aware of these situations, the casting couch and all that other stuff, and how bad men have treated women for such a long period of time in Hollywood. The last thing I will say that I extracted from the film, theme-wise, is once he could no longer be himself, once he could no longer be the alien and his eyes refused together and he could not take the contacts off anymore, and something with the nipple and the whole skin thing, I guess that was to allude that they were trying to experiment on him and maybe he couldn't take his skin off anymore. I'm not sure. I was confused about all that stuff, but the theme for me in the end is, if you're never truly yourself or never allowed to be truly yourself, it's never a successful journey. So once he was off base with what his goals were, his goals kept him who he was, getting back to his family, getting back to his planet, making sure his planet can recoup or whatever. But once that was taken away from him and somebody else was dictating to him who he was now, which was a prisoner and a captive and all that other stuff, and no longer a full alien because he can't have the eyes and stuff like that, you're no longer yourself. So when you're not true to yourself, your life never goes the way it should. So that's what I took from it. And if that's what he meant, then good.
Yeah.
Because that's what I got.
I mean, I very similar to that is like he was corrupted by the world, and he was corrupted by the people that he needed to get back to his planet. So he knew when he left there that if in fact the Earth had the solution to their problem, he was going to need to get back. And so that's why, the plan all along was to create a company, amass enough wealth to build something to get back there. But along the way, the people that he needed to fulfill that goal for him were the same people that corrupted him to the point where he lost sight of his goal. And he lost sight of his goal enough to where he ran out of time.
It goes back to absolute power corrupts absolutely. You start off with a genuine idea and an organic idea, and then all of a sudden you're sending rockets and Teslas into space,
They would say, all of those guys would say that they're doing it, to advance the human race. But, I mean, there's obviously some built-in ego associated with that.
You just have to look at the rocket and look at the design and know there's a lot of ego in that.
I think you're talking about the SpaceX one, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's as good a place
on
to
that
end
note
it as any.
I love it.
Oh, last thing. What is the deal with all the spinning lights? On the docks, they had spinning lights. Why?
I wondered that too. I thought that was a Great Gatsby thing at first because the green light on Great. Yeah, I
East
thought
egg,
that was
West
that,
egg.
but yeah. But I mean, so Bowie could look cool with the blue flashing light on his face when they were doing that scene. I mean, I guess.
But Rip Torn had one.
He totally looked.
Yeah, Rip Torn had one on his side, and the boat had one.
Yellow, but. So I thought, well, it's not like a plane's going to fly that low and fly into it. Is it so at night they can see where the dock is, maybe, I guess? I don't know.
I don't know
either.
But you're right. Like some of those things, it's probably like just, it's either just so because they thought it looked cool at the moment, or, the director was like super coked out and was like, we need lights. We need spinning lights everywhere.
And the irony is that you can't see the spinning light on Rip Torn's dock from Bowie's house.
Exactly.
But the other way around, you can. Oh. You can see it on. Yeah. It's funny how our minds think completely differently about most things, but there's one or two things that you and I both key in on.
Hone in on it.
What the heck is that about?
Can't get rid of it. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and we're also on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.